Welcome to Mimir, the podcast for ambitious entrepreneurs who want to launch and grow a successful business from day one. I'm your host, Maddie Kelly, and each week I sit down with founders who have been there, done that. We dive into the mindset, strategies, and practical tools you need to turn your vision into a reality. So let's get to work. Hey guys, welcome back to Mimir. Today we are obviously doing a solo episode. I'm currently coming to you live from my couch. I'm trying this whole cool girl podcast moment. We put up our Christmas tree over the weekend, so I have this beautiful mood lighting. Both of my cats are here with me. It is a cozy vibe. And I think that fits really well for the kind of solo episode that we're about to have. I originally wrote this solo episode as an article for Substack. This article is also on Substack, but I've never done this Substack to podcast pipeline, and I felt really strongly about wanting to share this episode on this platform here as well, because as we enter into the 2026 year, all of our feeds are going to be flooded with how to be more productive, vision boards, how to set yourself up for success for the coming year, and all that. And this topic is something I've been thinking about for a really long time. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself here, but I struggle with doubt and feelings of failure. And I thought maybe you guys would relate to that, feeling like we're not getting where we're supposed to be fast enough or successfully enough. And I think about this illusion of progress that we have, and how do we get off the hamster wheel of negative thoughts and find peace in the journey? Life is so short. All of us should enjoy every single day. But I think that really diving into being present and enjoying the journey is actually really challenging. So before I jump into the episode, I want to open with a quote that I will explain in a little bit. But the quote is, "All is hevel and chasing after the wind." The inspiration for this episode actually came from a Pilates class that I was in. I had about 10 minutes left. We're at the back of the reformer doing carriage crunches. And in an attempt to pay attention to anything other than the burning of my abs, I looked at myself in the mirror. I was wearing a new workout set that I got from Form, and I catch how my engagement ring glints in the light. And from the depths of my gut, this feeling bubbles to the surface. It's like excitement and joy followed by a realization that I was actively living in a moment I had dreamed about. But just as quickly as the transition to our next movement in class, the feeling was gone. The momentary realization essentially blew away with my exhalation. After class, I put on my sweatshirt and my sneakers and I started walking home, and I thought a lot about that experience. How exciting to recognize that one of my dreams had come true. But if that moment comes and passes so quickly, what's the point? And I don't say that to be morose, but I can't help thinking that we clearly fixate on the wrong thing. If reaching our dreams isn't the point, then what is? So I started this episode with a quote, which is actually from Ecclesiastes, whose name I genuinely still can't spell after writing it so many times. But all is hevel and chasing after the wind. Hevel roughly translates to vapor or smoke, essentially something you can see but can't hold. And in my mind, that's what dreams are like. We chase the vapor, and when we're close enough to grasp it, it evaporates. The moral of Ecclesiastes as a story is that all things are fleeting. The only place life exists is in the day-to-day. So you might as well enjoy the day. But like I said earlier, I think that's actually really, really hard to do. So that's what I want to dive into this episode is how do we actually learn to enjoy the journey? Most of us are striving towards something. And before we get there, we feel like we're failing. For me, that creeps in about once a month. I'll have days where I catch up with an old colleague and they're like, "Oh, how's the podcast going?" And I smile and respond, "Oh, it's going so great. It's ranked top 5% globally amongst other business podcasts." But internally, I genuinely feel like such a fraud. While that is a true statistic, shows like The Skinny Confidential are in the 0.01 percentile. So it's hard to feel proud when I have to tell someone that I don't have thousands of downloads a month. It feels like I've got quote unquote nothing to show for 2 years and almost 100 episodes worth of work and energy. And I guess I say nothing in quotations because it's all relative, right? As I was writing this solo episode, I came upon a reel in one of my evening scrolls. This girl had just gotten kicked out of her parents' house because she quit her job to pursue content creation full time. Her goal was to reach 100,000 followers. And when I checked her follower count after seeing that reel, she was already at 87,000. 87,000 to me, and I think to a lot of people, would be a dream come true. Like, if I had 87,000 followers, I'd probably be thinking about quitting my full-time job. Or even take JoJo, for example, a very famous singer and actor, but in her song Joanna, she speaks to herself, and she's clearly fighting with the feelings of failure. She says, "Speaking of which, where did your acting career go? You were supposed to be somebody. You were supposed to make more money, make us proud." And in the story of Ecclesiastes, he hits really hard on this point. Through his experiences, he learns that there is no version of success that exempts you from doubt, grief, disappointment, aging, loss, or insecurity. There's a shared illusion we have as human beings that if we work hard, we will achieve our dreams. But again, if what we are chasing is fleeting, then what's left to love is the journey. But how do you find joy in a journey where you feel like you're failing the whole time? I think hustle culture tells us to love the suffering, right? In my interview with Casey Romanello, we talk about how having high pain tolerance is a necessary prerequisite for entrepreneurs. We have to be resilient, right? Despite everything around you constantly trying to prove you wrong. But I think there's an important distinction we're missing, which I learned from the story of Exodus. If you don't recognize the name, you'll definitely know it from the part of the story where Moses parts the Red Sea and the Israelites escaped Egypt. But what I didn't know until I read the story was that what I thought was essentially that was the climax of the story is actually just the beginning of the story. And it actually is kind of mind-boggling to me that nobody talks about what happens afterwards. Essentially, what was supposed to be an 11-day journey to the promised land took 40 years. Why? Essentially, the Israelites had been enslaved for so long that they didn't know how to trust themselves, trust each other, or take responsibility and think long term, or build community and lead themselves. So they wandered through the woods for 40 years. And during that time, they go through the full range of emotions. They get scared, they curse God, and some of them even want to go back to Egypt even after having been enslaved. But eventually, they learn laws, customs, rituals, culture, and they become a people. What I think is so cool about this story is that there's actually only a couple lines talking about how and when they reach the promised land. I mean, obviously it's a metaphor, right? We're supposed to learn that the important part of the journey is not the end, but what happened in those 40 years. The becoming happens on the journey, and the becoming is what matters. So I don't believe in romanticizing hardship. The distinction I want to make here is that instead of thinking about the journey as a slog, we're crawling through mud in the rain, what if instead we saw it as a hike that we chose to go on? Maybe your socks are too thick and it's giving you blisters, and maybe your backpack is too heavy and the straps are chafing, but you look to your left and you see a butterfly. Or, I don't know, a cute dog passes you on the trail and you get to pet it. Everyone gets to the destination of the hike, takes a selfie, perhaps stops for a snack, and says, "All right, we made it, let's turn around." When you think about it, the majority of the time is spent on the climb. And I'm not much of a hiker, but whenever I've been forced to do one, I look back on the memories, and my favorite parts are not at the top. It's what happened before and after that. So if we know that we're supposed to love the journey, I guess my next question is sort of tactically, how do we release the fixation on the destination? Ecclesiastes would say that there's nothing better for a person than to find enjoyment in their work, for this is their portion. And for founders, this is especially poignant. If you genuinely love your problem space, the setbacks won't feel so punishing, right? In theory, they can be reframed as an excuse to dive deeper, which is a nice sentiment, but I don't think a lot of us actually know how to embody the ordinary, truly how to be so present in the moment that you can enjoy every single little bit of it and not be so fixated on the destination. Part of us as entrepreneurs has to live in the future at the same time as trying to operate the business today. It's this catch-22 where we want to achieve our goals, but they feel so far away. So we try to be more present, but the founder role is inherently forward-thinking. For part of my research for this episode, I asked ChatGPT, how can I be more present? And she gave me a list of commonplace tactics like focus on your breath, do a body scan, limit multitasking, remove distractions, grounding, journaling, boundaries around work. It's actually a pretty exhaustive list, which to me signals that we're all trying 8 million ways to accomplish this goal of living in the moment. And I'm sure that these work, but it just doesn't feel like a long-term solution to me. Like I can meditate in the moment of doubt and help it pass, but that doesn't erase the doubt, right? Like to me, it will eventually creep back in. So I had this thought. What if we reframed building a business to be similar to a journey of self-development? I wonder if then we would give ourselves more grace. And I think I would. I practiced pottery for a long time, and obviously I'd make mistakes often. I would pull a little too far and the whole thing would collapse, or I'd be trimming and like literally puncture a hole in the bottom of the bowl. It's obviously frustrating to work on something for days and then have to physically smash your hard work into a bunch of little pieces and start over. But that frustration, I think, teaches you. Like, I didn't walk out of the studio feeling like a failure. Yes, I'm annoyed, but I learned a valuable lesson, one that made me a better artist. And I think, like, this metaphor that I'm trying to create here can be applied really well to business. Let me break that down a little bit. Giving yourself grace doesn't erase the mistake that you've made, a quote unquote mistake. Giving yourself grace neutralizes the shame around that experience to bypass the ego and actually absorb the lesson. So, shame shuts down learning by fusing the action with the self. So, when you feel like you've made a mistake, shame makes you feel like you're the mistake. Instead of the problem being the behavior, it becomes you, which triggers ego. Your mind will then move to protect you from the pain of shame by refusing to look at the lesson. Whereas grace signals the opposite. When you give yourself grace, you actually create psychological distance between who you are, what happened, and what you choose next. That act diffuses the emotional charge around the moment. Your ego relaxes then because you're not attacking yourself. And I set this up because I'm not saying that like this only is applicable when you make a mistake. I think this also applies to progress. Shame traps us into thinking, I'm so far away from my goal and I should have accomplished more by now. But when you remove the shame, you have a perpetual openness that is required to notice the small wins too. So suddenly, sending an email every day, getting a kind message or learning something the hard way just like hits different. It hits as much as the cinematic milestones. So in my mind, grace lifts up the small wins to meet the big ones. So they're equal now. And when that redistribution happens, the entire journey becomes valid. Progress is no longer measured by unstable or unpredictable outcomes, but by your internal experience. This was my aha moment, is that when your emotional center is no longer tethered to external results, you can actually experience joy without requiring permission from success. And I want you guys to hear that again and let it sink in, because this was really important for me to hear that when you are not emotionally tethered to external results, i.e., like follower count, money count, clients, like all of that stuff, you can experience joy without requiring permission to succeed or like from success from those things. So, like, you can actually experience joy without feeling like you need to have 87,000 followers. I personally have always needed permission to feel proud, but grace creates that emotional safety that interrupts the conditional happiness loop. It lets pride exist in the journey, in the messy middle of it all. So, like, while breath work and meditation and body scans are helpful, I think that they can only take you as far as your mindset allows. If your underlying relationship to yourself is punishing or impatient, then meditating for 20 minutes at the onset of a doubt spiral is a band-aid solution. It might soothe your nervous system, but it doesn't actually change the internal conditions that triggered the spiral. Truly learning to find joy in the journey comes from releasing self-judgment and building self-trust. This is a journey that I have been on recently. I am really obsessed with consistent small progress right now. I think that it's so incredibly important to fixate on the daily small actions. Like, progress is defined by the consistent action. And I've always considered myself to be disciplined, but recently I've challenged myself with daily tasks, and what I thought would be an easy win, like, I'm essentially being forced to confront my lack of desire to change in a more visceral way than I've ever experienced. So every day, I commit myself to journaling 1 page, stretching for 20 minutes, meditating for 20 minutes, posting on social media every day, hydrating 40 ounces first thing, and making my bed first thing. Essentially, something that helps improve my mind, body, soul, and business. And like I said, it's been actually pretty enlightening and simultaneously challenging, because you're really confronted with how easy it is for you to make excuses for yourself. And the ease with which I break promises to myself is staggering. And it's really been like a great wake up call for me, because I know that these small changes will help me keep promises to myself, with which I will then be able to build the confidence to take on bigger challenges moving forward. And also, these small actions will compound in a better way. Like, waking up earlier makes me more productive. Posting on social media every day is great for my Substack. It will help me grow without a doubt. Our ego gets tied to these major transformation moments, but major transformation only seems major because the people didn't see the small progress that it took to get there. So I think that these two things are linked, where it's like, if we can do these small daily tasks on a consistent basis and really hold ourselves accountable to that, because it comes from a place of self-love rather than negativity, saying like, I'm not doing enough, therefore I should do more. Whereas it's like, look at all of these things that I do, I know I will be successful. I think that will guide us in a better, like, healthier way. So if you're looking for the inspiration and motivation to keep going, or even just to reframe your mindset around success, I hope this breakdown helped to bring more logic to you. And if you're trying to figure out how to bring grace to the forefront, I recommend starting with incorporating these 4 or 5 daily habits. Give yourself a hard 60 days. Pick something that will improve your mind, body, soul, and business, and check them off every single day. I will definitely do a more episode on this challenge that I've been doing after I'm a little bit more deep into it. I'm only a few weeks in, and I want to really continue to write down my experience for you guys as it happens, so then I can unfurl it in a more complete way. But I wanted to talk about this because I felt like it was really topical with us going into the New Year's and all this, like, reflecting on the year that we've had. And I want to remind you all that progress is progress, no matter what it looks like. And if we can reframe our mindset to be more loving of the messy middle, I think a lot of us will be happier and will actually find the strength to continue to go, rather than coming from a place of self-blame. So if you are going to start with the tasks, please let me know what yours are. I would love for us to be able to be accountability buddies. Plus, I just want to know what's resonating with you guys and what your guys' goals look like for the new year. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. If you feel called to support this podcast, please give it your honest rating, leave a review. If you want more, obviously come hang out on Substack. You'll get lots more wisdom and essays on this kind of stuff. As we enter into the holidays, it's likely that I will be taking some time off. So stay tuned. Make sure that you follow the podcast to get notified when episodes drop. And as you heard me say, I'm getting pretty active on Substack. So if you want more from Amir and from me, come hang out over there. So that's why I'm coming out with a solo episode for you guys. So take this with you as you start to reflect on next year. And until then, I will see you guys on Substack.